Call to order the meeting of the Minnehaha Creek Watershed District Board of Managers for September 8th, 2016. All managers are present except Manager Rogness, Manager Blixton, Manager Shepperton. There's no member, well, I'll ask, is there a member of the public who wishes to address the board in a matter that's not on the agenda or that is on the consent agenda? See no hands, but recognize that we have 3 members of the CAC here tonight. Thank you for being with us.
Will you enter their names in the record?
Well, that would be good. They're Colin Cox, Brian, Gerard, and Peter Eckelbacher. Thank you for being here. Colin, I got your name right? Yep. Okay. I'm not going to run for office anytime soon, but I'd work on that skill if I were.
That's very Humphrey of you.
Very Humphrey.
You never forget a name.
Exactly. Let me see here. The agenda, approval of the agenda here, there is one change we'll make, which is under 7.2, under upcoming meetings. On September 22nd at 4:30, there will not be an Operations and Programs Committee, but a Planning and Policy Committee. Are there any other changes anyone wants to the agenda? If not, is there a motion to approve?
Move approval.
Second.
Motion by Manager Miller, second by Manager Olson. Thank you very much. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Under information items and correspondence, we have the mid-year highlights newsletter produced by our staff and doing an excellent job of giving us some highlights of the activities that have happened so far this year. I want to thank staff for that very much. On the consent agenda, we have one item, which is approval of the minutes of August 25th, 2016. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Motion by Manager Becker. Is there a motion? Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Manager Miller. All those in favor say yes.
I'm sorry, Madam President.
Mm-hmm.
A couple of quick items on that. On page 2, line 48, approval of payroll direct deposits of 153,553.80. That some numbers got lost.
Okay.
And then after the semicolon, it says withdrawals of et cetera, that should be electronic fund withdrawals. And I would recommend the managers approve the minutes with those changes.
Then I'll make a motion to amend with those changes outlined by Mr. Welch. Is there a second to my motion? Those in favor of the amendment say aye.
Aye.
I'm not quite sure I'm doing this in proper parliamentary fashion, but
No,
as
that's
amended,
fine.
is there a motion to approve the agenda?
So
I'm sorry, the minutes.
That's already been done.
You have a motion, now it's amended. Now
Correct.
it's ready to go and vote.
Right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
Perfect.
Under board updates, President's report. I was reminded of the words of a very wise man this week. That man is Yogi Berra. He said, be very careful if you don't know where you're going, because you might not get there. And that just prompts me to think about the process we're going through with our budget and levy and some of the strategic analysis we're doing. And I wanted to be sure to recognize and thank Administrator Erdahl, all of the staff and all of the board who participated in the process of developing the budget and levy that we have tonight. It's a wonderful process, and the process is also important to be called out. A process that we will be refining and implementing in the next months and years, so that unlike the hapless person who might have inspired Berra's comment, we will know where we're going and why we're going there and how we got there when it happens. That is my report. Manager Miller, anything from the Planning and Policy Committee?
The minutes from the previous meeting were sent out, and rather than give a summary, there's meticulous note-taking by the staff, because it's important that we're going to be entering that into the minutes of the regular meeting, so that everybody stays current on what's happening at the planning committee. The attendance has been very well, except today it was a little off because several managers couldn't get there. But we're going to make a point of very comprehensive minutes and handouts being provided to all the board members, so, and as a permanent part of the record, so everybody gets an understanding of what the process we're going through. And it's, I think everybody would agree that it's a really comprehensive and complete approach to organization and budget and strategic planning and every other element of good government that we're examining every process and every purpose and with good discussion on all levels of staff and in full board engagement.
Thank you.
Madam President,
Yes, Manager Olson.
back in your schedule, you had the CAC meeting on the 15th.
Okay,
It doesn't.
it's actually the 14th? Or is it?
Yeah, probably.
15th is Thursday.
15th is this Thursday,
Mm-hmm.
Who's the liaison?
and it doesn't have a liaison.
I'm the liaison.
Manager Becker, okay. So 14th is CAC.
Does that sound right to everyone, the
All right,
14th?
14th, yeah.
I see nods
We
from
have
the
nodding.
CAC members here, so I would expect them to know. Thank you very much, Manager Olson.
Okay.
We are now at the public hearing on the budget and levy for 2017, so I will open the public hearing. Mr. Erdahl.
Thank you, President White and managers. And this is an opportunity for us to kind of share in a public format for anyone who's wished to attend. What we've done over the past 5 months, since I think we had our first workshop in the beginning of April with the Board of Managers, and the work that has been done by staff and also by the Board of Managers since then. So I'll go through a presentation, and then if there's any public comment, and then we can kind of proceed from there. A lot of this information is not new to the managers, but it is kind of a matter of the public record. We did publicly notice the meeting as required by law, so it's been noticed. So, and also the materials were posted to make sure that the public had an opportunity to review those materials, not only in advance of this meeting, but also in advance of the previous public meetings that we've had with the Board of Managers. Just as an overview of kind of the roles and purpose of the Minnehaha Creek Watershed District and identifying us as the local government unit that's responsible for managing and protecting water resources in the watershed. And also kind of highlighting especially the work that the managers and staff have done this past year to update our mission, which is to collaborate with public and private partners to protect and improve land and water for current and future generations. And so that's kind of a guiding overall mission for us. And then just in terms of the authorities that we have is that the Watershed District was authorized by the Minnesota Watershed District Act, and that directs watershed districts to integrate water resource management and efforts among city, county, and state agencies. And we receive our primary source of our funding is through property taxes, although we're also looking at other diversifying sources of revenue. In terms of the levy, the budget and levy process for 2017, the district follows an open public process, and we've had a lot of input from the management team, the staff at all levels in developing the department budgets and work plans. Those have been presented in increasing level of detail since early April, and we've received direction from the Board of Managers to kind of come through with the final proposed budget. The Board of Managers holds a public hearing, which is right now, to solicit input from the public, and then proposes adopts the preliminary budget and levy. The final budget and levy then for the coming year would be officially adopted in December. In terms of the timeline that we've gone through to date, these are the 6 public meetings of the Board of Managers that have taken place. And again, as I just mentioned, we've had kind of increasing levels of specificity and precision as we've gone along, and we've taken direction from the board to refine both reductions that have been made in department budgets. We've looked at not only this coming year in 2017, but also projected the impacts of some of these decisions going forward into 18, 19, and beyond. So we've tried to put the budget in context with the future planning also. In the timeline coming up to today, we have the preliminary budget and levy hearing today. The board will consider and approve that, and then announce December 8th as the final public comment period. Next Thursday, Thursday next week, is the certification of the 2017 budget and levies to the counties that we are part of, Hennepin and Carver. And then on December 8th, there's a public comment period, and then the board will finalize the 2017 budget following that. An overview of the different areas and their responsibilities. We have our General Operations and Support Services program area that does a lot of things that are maybe unseen but support the operation of the whole organization in terms of paying the bills, making sure the lights are on, making sure that staff has what they need when they need it to be successful in their endeavors, that the staff are compensated, that we pay the payroll, and that we have the appropriate mechanisms in place to manage contracts and vendors appropriately. Our communication education programs work with some grant programs with direct outreach and education programs, and also partnering with other organizations for outreach and education programs. They manage a comprehensive communications program for various target audiences that we serve, and also the administration of a cost share grant program to encourage best management practices throughout the watershed. Our research and monitoring area includes research and monitoring that has been done, longitudinal monitoring for the district. That database is used for a lot of different purposes by a lot of different agencies. We've had ecosystem evaluation systems that have been developed and soon will be implemented in the coming year. And also we've had a focus in recent years on aquatic invasive species and watercraft inspection and cost share grants. And a big area of our program has been what we call our planning and permitting area. The programs that are included there are the permit administration, planning and projects, the capital projects, project maintenance and land management, land conservation, habitat restoration. And there are several of the projects in the coming year that are highlighted there, not to be an exhaustive or all or exclusive list, but those are some of the primary projects that we have slated for the coming year. And with the Board of Managers, we went through the capital investment program and kind of made sure that those were the most appropriate programs at this time and with the available resources. Looking a little bit back into history, we talked last year when we did the budget about our budget and levy process, and in the years 2008 or 2009, those lines started diverging a little bit as the budget increased and the levy was kept fairly flat. The increase in the budget was often paid for by accumulated reserve funds that were able to be allocated to those purposes. In more specific detail, we had a gap in 2009 of about 1.6 million. That gap between the levy and the budget in 2014 had increased to a little bit over $5 million. And I think we've categorized it, starting with the budget discussions last year, as we're in somewhat of a correction period as we bring those lines back together, and we don't want to have our program and our operation in a constant growth mode, but we want to make sure that we are growing the impacts of our programs and projects and doing that in an efficient manner. So for this year, the proposed budget is a 5% increase. The proposed levy increase is a 7% increase. And I think it's important to note that's kind of a little bit of the 5% increase in the budget is partially due to a planned and scheduled increase in our debt service payments. So without that, the overall program and operational budgets would have actually decreased 3%. So that was a programmed and scheduled event that we were aware of, obviously, going into this. So that gap has been decreasing, and as I mentioned, it would have decreased a little bit more except for that increase in the debt service payment that was a known and scheduled event. Looking by each program area, comparing the 2016 budget to the 2017 budget, this chart shows the changes that have been made across those different program areas that result in the overall 5% budget increase. And in your packet and in the packets shared online, there's a more detailed version of that budget summary that kind of broke down each of the areas in a little bit more detail looking at both uses and the sources of financial resources. Overall, in kind of somewhat in conclusion, the levy will go up from 2016 to 2017 by 7% to $9,315,286, and the budget goes from last year's budget up to an amount of $13,460,253. And just in terms of context for the impact that has on the residents of the watershed district, estimating the impact of that on the kind of the typical home prices at $180,000, $300,000, $600,000. You can see at the top level at $600,000, that's a $6 increase over the course of the year, or about 50 cents per month. And we're confident that the increase in services provided and the projects that are going to be implemented are going to have a long-term benefit for the residents of the district. And with that, if any, we are available for public comment.
Thank you, Mr. Erdahl. Do the three of you who represent the public here this evening wish to make any comment on the budget or levy? Thank you for being here, and thank you for attending some of those combined committee meetings and board meetings we've had along the way. At this point, I will close the public hearing. The next action item is 10.1, which is resolutions 16073 and 16074, adoption of the 2017 budget and certification of 2017 tax levies.
Move approval.
There's a motion. Let's take the resolution separately.
Sure.
And I believe we have to do a roll call vote.
Correct.
Okay.
Need a second also.
Yes, thank you.
Should we
So-
call in the members, or
I'm sorry?
is Mr. Shackleton on site?
He is on site. Yes. I wonder, Mr. Mant, okay. There's a motion to approve. May I take your motion to be 16073?
Correct.
Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
And would you do the roll call, Mr. Welch?
I will.
We'll wait a moment to see if Manager Shackleton will join us.
I thought I saw him walk out
Andrew Miller.
the building.
Okay.
Well, that's his iPad, isn't it?
Oh.
His pen, iPad.
That would be, if you want to sign tonight, you should give one. Who's your secretary?
Oh, okay.
Well, we have a
Uh,
quorum.
We do.
We have a quorum, but it would be good if somebody would find him.
Should we recess for a few minutes? or-
Mr. Erdahl.
I was just conferring with Mr. Welsh, and since our secretary is not present, if we would like to have these signed this evening, it might also be good to have appoint a secretary pro tem for the evening,
Okay.
so that we could sign these this
Thank
evening.
you.
We
will.
could do that after the two motions get made.
Sure.
Sure.
Or not.
Be happy to.
Or, well, you have a motion on the floor right now, which is a little
Right.
odd to intervene with another action.
And we could
but-
do that. If
It's
we wanted
only
to.
7:15. We'll just be patient.
Okay.
And
It's not 1 a.m. as we discussed
Okay.
earlier.
Well, as long as we got all this time, maybe we can go back and examine the budget.
Don't read that, haven't
Mr.
we?
Matt could do a sign.
Okay, thank you.
Hello? I let him know.
Dog on light rail.
Hmm?
Dog on light rail.
Yeah, I'm sure he is. NPR had a article that there may be a special session
Hmm.
Before or after the election.
before.
Wow.
And more on tape, but, you know, there's discussion about the you know, the size of the LRT budget. 15 years ago, you know what it cost for the intersection of 394 and Highway 100?
What?
364 million. You know, I mean, just put it in perspective.
15 years ago?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
For that one intersection.
Mm-hmm.
That's a stadium,
It's a what?
a stadium.
About
It used to
a
be.
third of a
It's
stadium.
about a third of a stadium nowadays.
15 years in place.
Yeah. Well, it'd be a great stadium 15 years ago.
Michael,
Yeah.
could we table this or just post?
Sure.
How would I do that?
You can-
What's the right word, amended word?
Just make a motion to table.
I so move.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Then we can move along to.
And do whatever you wish, yeah. Come back to
The
this.
question of Secretary Pro Tem for the evening.
Move Mr. Olson be the Secretary Pro Tem.
Second.
Nominate.
Second, those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? There you are. Thank you, Manager Olson. And then an announcement. The announcement is that a public meeting will take place on December 8th, 2016 for public input regarding the district's 2017 budget and levy. Removed from Mr. Welch.
And just to be clear, this is the second year that we've operated under this new truth and taxation structure, and the levy is final as of, has to be final as of September 15th.
Okay.
And that goes, because the county needs it before, so they can do their levying process. If the managers wanted to reduce it after you got some notes or discussion with the public, you could do that. But as has always been the case, it can't increase after we've finalized and certified to the county, which has to happen before September 15th.
Thank you for the clarification. Appreciate it. Move to remove from the table.
Second.
Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Then we're back to the motion and second that we had to approve resolution 16-073, which is to adopt the 2017 budget. Any discussion?
Separate votes for levy and budget.
That's correct. Mr. Welch will do a roll call. And this is 073, which is the budget.
On the motion
Hello.
to adopt resolution 16-073, Manager Becker votes.
Yay.
Manager Blixt absent. Manager Rognus absent. Manager Miller votes.
Aye.
Manager Shackleton votes.
Aye.
Manager White votes.
Yay.
Manager Olson.
Aye.
The vote is 4-0 against, 2 absent. The motion passes.
5.
It's 5-0.
What did I say?
4.
Oh, 4.
Well,
Sorry,
there was-
I wasn't used to
there was
that.
three ayes.
5
Three ayes and
This
two.
is a theme. We made a mistake with the numbers in the minutes and the
Round
year.
up.
Give me a chance with another one.
All right, one more then. Is there a motion to adopt resolution 16074, certifying the 2017 tax levy?
So moved.
Motion by Manager Shackleton, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Manager Miller. Any discussion? Will you take the roll call, Mr. Welch?
On motion to adopt resolution 16-074, Manager Becker votes.
Yay.
Manager Blixt is absent. Manager Rognus is absent. Manager Miller votes.
Aye.
Manager Shackleton.
Aye.
Manager White.
Yay.
Manager Olson.
Aye.
The motion passes 5-0 with 2
Thank you.
absent.
Thank you very much. Item 10.3, Resolution 16-075, Ms. Schaufler. Authorization to award a construction contract for the Highway 101 Causeway Shoreline Reconstruction Project.
So I have 2 things planned out. One is I just realized my title on the resolution is incorrect. And then also the second item is the bid tabulation for your review. Tonight, staff is seeking authorization to award the construction contract for the Highway 101 Causeway Shoreline Reconstruction Project to THN Enterprises Incorporated in the amount of $835,943 and establish a construction budget for the not to exceed amount of $919,537. So in the resolution itself, the totals for the 3 bids received were in there. Now handed out is the actual broken down bid tabulation, which isn't public data until the board approves the construction contract tonight. We received 3 bids. As you can see, THN Enterprises submitted the lowest bid, and they also came in about $50,000 under the engineer's estimate. They plan to do all of the work from the barge that Tom Nickum owns. So that was the rate where they were able to provide quite a bit of cost savings rather than working from the road. With that, I can answer any questions. Otherwise, staff is seeking authorization tonight to enter into the contract with THN Enterprises.
Thank you. Manager Olson, question?
Tiffany, is that a typo where you got traffic control of 385,000 on the Sunrun construction?
Manager Olson, that is not a typo. That is where Sunram put a good chunk of their budget for the project.
What line is that?
2.
What was the explanation? Excuse me.
So Manager Olson managers, so Sunram was assuming working from the road. So with
Okay.
that, they have to have a lane closure and provide traffic control. So that's where their budget was higher than THN Enterprises for that.
Before I ask for a motion, I'd like to spend just a few moments to give us a few moments to read the handouts. But Manager Shackleton, you have a question?
Not being able to quickly read the handout, and knowing that bids, I mean, kind of across a variety of industries, bids are coming back higher than initial estimates. And 2 of the bids came back higher than our initial estimate, but 1 came back 50,000 less. Why?
Manager Shackleton manager, it's because THN Enterprises has a barge location. They have a barge on Lake Minnetonka. So the other ones, if they were to hire him, then they would have to put cost above to make some money off of it. Whereas he has the mobilization on Lake Minnetonka to utilize using his own equipment rather than renting it out to the other contractors.
But his mobilization is on par with Sunram's.
And perhaps
Maybe that.
Mr. Meehan can speak to it where they tend to put their numbers.
Sure. And I mean, the other question I had, which might be from Mr. Meehan as well, is Sunram has $1 in for drip irrigation, and everybody else is in the tens of thousands.
Manager, Shackleton managers, this is the gaming that contractors do based on how they want to get paid. So drip irrigation is one of the last things that goes in on a project. And so what they would look to do is build costs up in different ways. So you could see Sunram approach their costs in putting it in traffic control, which is something that gets paid more up front, what you're doing. Similar to what Rachel Construction did. So you'd see the next company over put in $300,000 for mobilization. So contractors are becoming savvy on their money management and when bid items get paid and when they get put out. So what it is it's a strategy that they're using on how they got paid out. When we look to average it out over a whole project, we know the costs are in the unit costs that we have, they're just moved around specifically. And that's where Nickum is able to kind of take advantage of the fact he does have the barges on the lake to be able to go into the property.
Good question. Thank you for the
That
answer.
was a great answer too.
Yeah.
What I'm impressed with is how close the engineer's estimate was to the front. That was good work.
We get lucky every now and then.
Any additional questions?
Move approval.
Motion.
Second.
Motion and second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you very much, Ms. Schaffler and Mr. Meehan. Item 10.4, Resolution 16-076, authorization to request an extension for comprehensive plan adoption from Board of Water and Soil Resources. Ms. Christopher. I've learned not to say Bowser too much because people go, huh? So, Board of Water and Soil
You're doing better
Resources.
than you. Thank you, Madam Chair, managers. Tonight, staff is requesting authorization to seek an extension from the Board of Water and Soil Resources. The original And its deadline we're working towards for plan adoption is June of 2017, which is 10 years from the date that Bowser approved our last plan, our current plan. And under statute, Bowser is allowed to grant extensions if requested on that revision date. And kind of the possibility of seeking an extension for the district plan was discussed previously with the Planning and Policy Committee back in February, where we kind of laid out the expected timelines of how all the different moving parts are coming together. So we've got the strategic planning that we'd ideally like to at least get through kind of the purpose, program purpose discussions to inform the plan. And we've also got the 6-mile planning process going on. And we kind of flagged at that time that it may be challenging to get all those pieces to kind of come together and incorporate into the plan by the end of the year, which is when it would be needed to allow for kind of that roughly 6-month process of formal review, comment, and approval. And so with that in mind, plus now the added twist that I'm going to be out on maternity leave for a few months within that window, staff is requesting that we seek an extension. And we have had discussions, staff has had discussions with Bowser, and don't anticipate any issues.
Let them argue with that explanation.
Yeah. So we don't anticipate any issues with the request, and we've confirmed that it won't affect grant eligibility for the following year. And so we'd simply be operating under our current plan a little bit longer. The proposed timeline is laid out there, where we'd be seeking to have the plan still primarily drafted by the end of the year, and then use the first few months of 2017 for kind of internal review and editing, working with the board, with the advisory committees, and then get a draft out for 60-day review in April. And then we have about 45 days to turn around comments and revisions on those, on that feedback that we get, and then we move into kind of the 90-day state agency review. And so with that schedule in mind, then we'd be anticipating Bowser plan approval or action on the plan in October, and the board could then adopt in November. And again, staff's requesting extension through then the end of November, which is about a 5-month extension. I'll take any questions.
Thank you. Is there a motion to
Move approve.
adopt? Is there a second?
Second.
Are there any questions or discussion? Manager Shackleton.
One point of clarification.
Mhm.
In the committee meeting we had, kind of the calendar planning went out to roughly this time frame in 2017. I just wondered, was that in part because of this resolution? With the idea that
I don't know if I follow.
there was a planning chart at the
There was a Gantt chart at the
Gantt.
committee meeting prior to this.
Yes, exactly. That went out to like November of 17, and that was just to reflect essentially the timeline that would occur with Bowser approving this timeline, right?
Manager Shackleton, managers, I think we still recognize that not the entire strategic planning process will be done for the plan. We're mainly focused on, as I said, kind of the program purpose piece and then how the programs link together.
Yeah.
Having that all clarified to inform the plan. Some of the operational details that we'd be working on in the following months aren't critical for being incorporated into the plan. So that's why we've kind of extended the timeline beyond that window.
Thank you.
Any additional discussion or questions? All those in favor, Manager Mr. Welch?
This is a statutorily created option for extensions, and I haven't looked into it. I don't know that we've ever had it come up before, but I wonder if, Becky, if you had a specific confirmation from Bowser that if they act and they approve this extension, then the plan remains valid through the extension period and there would be no issue as to grant eligibility for sponsorship. Do you got specific
Yes.
confirmation of that?
That's
So
been
that's
confirmed, yeah.
important.
And the report does say that the Bowser had confirmed no grant issues.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Mr. Becker, Manager Becker.
Becky, what was the form of that confirmation?
Email at this point. So there's kind of two pieces to it. So the one, as Mr. Welch brought up, is if our plan is extended, we are, in compliance. We are acting under an approved plan. And then in addition to that, through Bowser's own kind of internal policies, they have a December 1st deadline for grant eligibility for the following year. So even without that first piece being in play, with the timeline I've laid out here, we would have it adopted by that December 1st deadline. So
Thank you.
either way, we're good.
Anything else? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Item 11.1 is a discussion item, the buffer law and potential district rule. Again, Ms. Christopher.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Manager. Back at the July workshop, staff had come with an update on the state buffer program and some draft policies that were out for comment to see whether the board was interested in submitting comments. And also, there was a discussion at that time as to whether there was interest from the board in taking on the optional role of enforcement authority under the law. And staff was asked to come back with more information to help inform that decision, which is the purpose of my update tonight. But I just want to mention too that the board need not act or make a decision on that tonight. We've got until March, end of March 2017, to notify Bowser if we want to choose to exercise jurisdiction for enforcement. So this is just kind of a preview, and if the board wants to make a decision at this point, great, and if not, we've got more time to think about it. So, and then just as another update, we did submit a comment letter, mainly requesting more clarification regarding the MS4 exemption. Bowser has since adopted those policies. There weren't any formal responses sent back, but I know they did make some tweaks to the policies based on the input that they got. Nothing too earth-shattering that I could see in terms of the revisions to that. So I think the interpretation is still generally the same, where it does apply to us, even though we're in MS4. Basically, to be exempt, we have to demonstrate that we had put some kind of project in place that provided equal protection, which is not going to be the case for a lot of the districts, obviously. So in terms of, I think one of the things that was requested was more information on how the law applies within our watershed. It does apply to all public waters and public ditches, and the DNR has released a map just showing where those are located, and I provided a link to that in the memo. And so despite the fact that it applies in all these areas, that doesn't mean there's going to be issues in most of these areas, particularly in our watershed. It really is targeting bare soil, primarily agricultural land. And so the approach that the soil and water conservation districts are taking, as they're the ones charged with identifying non-compliant sites, is they're doing a GIS analysis to just look at, okay, where are the agricultural parcels, where do they intersect with buffers, and then from there they'll do an aerial photo review, see which ones look like they may have bare soil, and then go do a field visit as needed. And so that's underway right now. Both Carver County, SWCD, and then Hennepin County are working through that process. And from conversations I've had with Carver so far, they think there's probably only 2 or 3 sites that would potentially be non-compliant within our watershed. And those are kind of in the Turbid-Lunston corridor, and are parcels that we've already kind of had conversations with and looked at for potential projects. For Hennepin, they've identified 363 parcels countywide that have agricultural land intersecting buffers. So it's only going to be a small subset of that that's within our district, and then a subset of that that's actually not compliant or needs further investigation. And so I don't have an exact number from Hennepin, but overall we're expecting a pretty low number of properties where this would really apply within our watershed. And so in terms of this optional enforcement role, again, either watershed districts or counties can choose to take this on. If we don't, then Bowser is the enforcement authority. Back at the July meeting, I had provided a recommendation that we not assume the enforcement role, at least at this time. And I laid out a few reasons why I think it would not really be in our favor. Or, part of it is just there's a lot of unknowns still about how this is actually going to be implemented. Bowser's still rolling out a lot of different guidance documents and really still developing the program. At this point, there's no funding associated with it. That is something that they're pursuing and trying to secure, but it's not yet at this point. And then part of it is just that I think it could be, a significant administrative burden for us to develop the program and the tools and the ordinances and things that need to go along with this for, again, a relatively small number of sites. And then one other item is that we, under the policies that have been established, we would be at risk of losing grant eligibility if for some reason we were determined to not be implementing it satisfactorily. And so my recommendation would be, and again, the board doesn't need to act on it at this time, is that rather than taking on this role, we could serve in a technical capacity, helping to work with Bowser, with the county, SWCD, wherever there are non-compliance issues to help kind of develop solutions, work with the landowner, and I think that's just kind of a better position for the district to be in generally.
Mhm.
Thank you very much, Manager Miller.
I think you answered. I was going to say, I think that there's some benefits to having having the authority because of it develops relationships with people who are enforcing, I suppose, which would be important. But I guess you figured out a better way of developing these relationships as being a assistance to them rather than a regulator. So I concur with your recommendation.
Manager Becker?
Does staff have any notion as to the contribution of the unbuffered ag sites to water quality in the watershed?
Manager Becker, managers, I really don't have any estimates on that, or haven't done any analysis on that. And again, at this point, we're not sure how many sites potentially that is in our district, but we think, again, that is relatively small.
When you say small, what would be the number?
Well, as I said, for Carver County, we're talking about 2 or 3. Within Hennepin, I don't know if I want to hazard a guess. I know like I said, they're working through the analysis and they're going to be providing kind of their GIS layers and information to us as soon as they can. So I can always bring that back.
Madam Chair, if the notion is that the contribution is nil, then it's abject regulation. It doesn't have an object that works in our strike zone. So it might be worthwhile to get a notion.
I'm willing
Mr.
to
Whisker.
hazard a guess that it's nil. 2 to 3 sites is immeasurable, particularly in the 6 mile subwatershed, where we know where the defined external loading sources are and where the internal loading sources are. And in the turbid to Lunston chain, most of the issues are coming from a 40-acre ditched and tiled farmed wetland on the west side of the lake, and then there's a channel from Turbid Lake up to Lunston Lake where these 2 to 3 non-compliant sites are. And the main issues in Lunston and the channel leading up are carp. Lunston is the most prolific carp nursery outside of Halstead Bay in the 6 mile chain. And so these sites have effectively zero contribution. And in Hennepin County, I'd be willing to hazard a guess that out of 363 ag land use parcels they've found intersecting public waters, it's close to 1 to 2 sites where there may be unvegetated land, just seeing the aerials day in and day out and scanning the watershed. They may have identified 363 parcels in Hennepin County that may touch agricultural land use. It's not clear to us yet if any of those ag parcels, I would assume some percentage of them are in the district, and of those, it's probably less than a handful that would be unvegetated. And so I think it's fairly safe to say to use Manager Becker's language, this regulation really doesn't operate in our strike zone. There's not much use.
And we certainly have time to revisit it in February if we think there's anything new in the information, or I will have been to the MOD annual meeting. I'll see if there's some discussion there about whether any watersheds are opting in, and that might help us to hear what their thoughts are one way or another. Mr. Welch?
Becky sounded like she
Well,
had
yeah, just one last note is then that even after that, so Bowser's requesting some notification from us by the end of March. just so they can kind of staff up accordingly and plan accordingly. But we do also have the option, even after that date, to take on the role if we choose. We just have to give 60-day notice.
Thanks for the reminder. So, I don't want to commit to bringing it back to the agenda necessarily, but if something new develops, we certainly can do that then or later. Anything else we should think about? Thank you very much for the update and the additional information. The administrator's report, Mr. Erdahl.
Thank you, President White and managers. A few updates, and then also Ms. Shelfler is going to kind of give an update about water level things too, since that's been a hot topic lately. One update is that as a follow-up to the Nemo boat tour that we hosted in early August, we're hosting a planners breakfast for planners throughout the watershed district on Tuesday, September 20th here at the district. And we're hoping to build on those relationships with planning professionals to better integrate our natural resources work with their land use planning work. In addition to kind of sharing some of the same case studies that we shared as part of that Nemo boat tour, we're also going to have some community partners represented there, including from the Sean Walther from St. Louis Park and also Ben Landhauser from the City of Victoria to demonstrate kind of some of the ideas that they've been working with us and collaborating on. So, also I wanted to give an update on the Lake Minnewaska zebra mussel identification and also rapid response. I think everyone is aware that on August 18th, the district staff, during its kind of typical routine monitoring, found 4 zebra mussels under one dock at the public access. On follow-up monitoring, they found 10 more there and no other zebra mussels at other inspection sites around other likely spots around the lake, and none at any of the sampling plates that have been stationed at resident stocks around the lake. So the public access was closed. An alternative public access within the same park boundary was opened, and they isolated a 29-acre bay, locally known as Lake Minnie. That Carver County then purchased at about $10,000. They purchased some barrier that county purchased to isolate both a smaller area around the public access point, and also this Lake Minnie, this bay, has a pretty narrow mouth where it connects to the rest of the lake, so it's kind of an ideal and isolated situation to try some treatment. So they isolated it there too. Eric Fielseth on our staff is coordinating a lot of the efforts in terms of working with vendors and the different partners, which include Carver County, the Department of Natural Resources, and the Lake Minnewaska Preservation Association. And the kind of response plan has now officially been approved by the DNR. And the plan is to treat the 29-acre bay with EarthTech QZ, which is a copper-based product that's been proven to be effective. Initial treatments will be mid next week, and then there might be some bump treatments as we go along to make sure that we maintain the desired concentrations. The treatment will last around 8 to 14 days and depend on zebra mussel mortality results that they measure. We're going to be sampling the impact on zebra mussels by having some zebra mussels from another lake in a small enclosed mesh cage, so that we can prove that the materials are actually being effective at a lethal dose to the zebra mussels. With President White's approval earlier this week, I authorized...
Wait a minute. You're bringing zebra mussels over there?
In an enclosed mesh container. There's going to be some sub-adults, non-reproductive zebra mussels brought in, and that they will be able to demonstrate the lethality of the dose of the copper.
Can they do that
I've heard of
outside of the lake? Can they do that on a table?
Yeah, they can. But the concentrations, there's been a lot of studies in a tank, in an aquarium, in a lab setting, but it's a very different situation in lake. So this protocol was, like I said, run past the DNR, approved by the DNR. Required by the DNR in order to prove efficacy.
This sounds, I don't even know
Very
if,
small measure.
this sounds so unscientific. I
Well,
just,
it is scientific, it's a control.
well,
Right.
yeah, if you control, but you're bringing, I don't know. It sounds like we're creating an opportunity for a disaster.
How do we know that these things, that how do you determine the zebra mussel is not reproductive?
By the size.
After a certain size,
If
they
they're,
can't
if they're
reproduce?
around, I think it's 9 to 12 millimeters, they're not yet reproductive. If they're larger than that, then they're adults that are in a reproductive stage.
So we're putting in teenage zebra mussels.
Well,
Tweens.
yeah.
Well, I mean.
Prepubescent zebra mussels.
Prepubescent zebra mussels. I mean, but, and the lethality to a non-reproducing zebra mussel is the same as it would be to an adult.
Yes.
What kind of, I mean, so what kind of containers will contain a tiny little zebra mussel that would not get ripped by a hook,
Well-
a submerged branch?
Well, there won't be any of those there. I mean, they will be in a controlled setting in the treatment area, so there won't be hooks or branches. It'll be very controlled. Yeah.
Manager Olson?
How much, I might ask our director while he's in the room here, how much damage was done to that membrane when that boat ran over it in the middle of the night?
Mr. Dawson?
Managers, I would say that there's some, but it's also very far from where the zebra mussels were found. So it's anticipated that it will work very well. The two, there's an area immediately around the dock that's less than an acre, which can be dosed a little bit higher if necessary. The idea is to have one mesh cage, is what it's called, with about 25 zebra mussels, one in that area, one in another area, so it will be controlled. And the mesh on it is like a millimeter or two, and the zebra mussels that would be put in there were going to be obviously larger than that mesh so that they don't get out of it.
Just, is the mesh, I mean, I'm envisioning a
It's-
screen, and I have a cat and a dog that both could, and have.
This will be in the water, it's a plastic, strong plastic material.
No cats or dogs will get in.
No. I don't think there's any catfish there. Or dogfish.
That was a good answer.
Buffalo.
We'll have to trust the scientists on this one.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know if we can, I just don't like the idea of bringing invasive species into a lake. I'm just, yeah,
Not, I mean, at the risk of being a royal pain, I do trust the scientists, but I'd like to see it. I mean, it's one thing. I mean, it's one thing to tell if there's a failure. It's one thing to say, you know, we took advice, and that's what we do. But it's a nice. It's a lot easier to say, you know, we took advice. They showed this to us. We just like.
Yeah, well, this, Manager Shackleton, managers, this is a requirement of the DNR. If there's nothing done, we won't know.
the procedure?
We are managing it, and they're they're setting the parameters on what needs to be done. But it's a common technique.
But they're requiring.
Yes. Otherwise, they will not approve the permit to do the treatment. And they're doing it to test the lethality of the treatment. Because we don't know where there may not be any more zebra mussels in that lake. We don't know, but we want to be sure that the treatment has effect if there were any.
They're the canary in the mine.
Yes.
In a way.
So if the zebra mussels don't die in our test sites,
If we will be able to increase the dosage so that they would all die.
is the intention to do that?
Yes.
To dose, and if that doesn't work, to redose?
There will be redoses along the way, and if necessary, I mean, it will be done, one of two things. It will be done as long as necessary to be able to get the 100% lethality of the test zebra mussels, or the dose will be increased to make sure that it happens.
Can you just explain again where the tests, where our zebra mussels will be placed?
I know that one will be placed within the inner containment area around the dock, around the public access, which is less than an acre. I'm not sure exactly where the other location would be, but it would be a location where there would be minimum interference from anybody or anything.
No errant hooks cast?
No.
I'm just curious, like, how do we ensure that? I mean, like, at a practical level, like, remembering the theories that somebody took a stone from Lake Minnetonka and chucked it into Christmas Lake to infest the lake.
Seton.
How to seed the lake? How do we like?
Seaweed, yeah.
How do we like structure communication of do not come here in a way that doesn't turn into a
Well, one way is that this whole area is closed to the public and there's no private property along this bay. It's all public parkland. So it's all controlled by the park, the Carver County Park.
Okay.
So there are no homes or residents or docks in the whole treatment area at all.
So there's no observation.
to get access to it, to get access, you have to go through a control point
Correct.
managed by
A gate,
managed by
locked,
Carver Parks.
yeah, there's a control gate at the entry of Carver Park to go in.
So if there is a failure, that's because of somebody doing something.
Right, because right now the launch is closed.
Yep.
Other questions? Thank you for the updates you kept giving us through email, the prompt update, and I appreciate especially the map that showed the location and very
Okay.
clearly outlined the constricted bay that
Okay.
the test area is in, the treatment area.
Thank you very much. I'll be sure to pass that along to Eric.
Anything else, or should we let Mr. Erdahl continue?
The last kind of point of update is kind of there's been a lot of interest in water levels in Lake Minnetonka and the creek in the last week or two. I know that some of you have been contacted by residents asking about our control measures for that. Tiffany and her staff and our whole staff team have done a great job of communicating with the communities that live along the creek especially, and also with the public about, I know that we've sent out information that the creek is not safe to paddle at this rate of flow and level, and also kind of that communication to the cities that are along the creek. We've even had thank you emails in response to some of the work that Tiffany does, which isn't typical of sending out kind of regulatory alerts or anything like that. So we've had some thank yous from both Edina and St. Louis Park and maybe some others too since then. But with the track to be on one of the wettest year on record in the Twin Cities, they're going to keep staying up higher. So Tiffany was going to give a brief update on where we are with some of those things. And if you have any questions, Tiffany's the person in the know.
Thank you, Lars. So yeah, tonight I thought it'd be useful just for the managers. Obviously, 2014 we learned a lot of lessons, and just want to provide an update on what we've taken away from that, some of the tools we've implemented, and what we continue to kind of aggregate and develop as the year goes on. So just wanted to take the opportunity to do that. So we certainly aren't in 2014 where we were in 2014. 2014 was a very wet kind of early spring and into summer. This year's been a pretty typical year, with the exception of August was just very, very wet. We had like a 3.5-inch rainfall followed by 2-inch rainfall, so just like these very intense and short duration rainfalls that have kind of put us in a higher water situation than we'd like to be for this time of year. So the red dot indicates where we sit today. So we're at 929.58, and we increased the discharge today to 250 CFS. So we had lowered it last Friday in the email communication I sent out to you, and that was in anticipation of the rain that was predicted over the weekend. And we did hear from the city of Edina that they were very thankful for that, because that extra capacity allowed for the precipitation to not put the creek over its banks. So that was helpful. So as Lars mentioned, we were on pace for kind of being the wettest year, which, like I said, seems a bit strange because it seems like it's been somewhat normal, but it's really because of August was the 6th wettest August on record. So what I'm going to do is just kind of walk through the different tools that we've developed since 2014 to help inform dam operations, and some of them are things that you've approved piecemeal, so just kind of seeing how they all aggregate together to help inform that. So the first piece is a partnership that we entered into with the United States Geological Survey. Thank you. To install a real-time lake level reading gauge on Lake Minnetonka. So we had one previously on Minnehaha Creek. USGS has said that was by far their most visited gauge, and they thought it'd be useful with all the attention that Lake Minnetonka gets, and especially in 2014 to install one there. So we have one on Lake Minnetonka. This graph gets updated every 4 hours. We can also download data every 15 minutes in a table form, and this has been a very useful communication tool because staff only typically goes out Monday, Wednesday, Friday, takes a reading, whereas people can check this 4 times a day to see what's actually happening on the lake. And also in somewhat real time, understanding when there's rain, you can see the jumps that happened over the weekend. So that's one piece. Another tool that we've developed recently is with the National Weather Service, these precipitation forecasts. So what the National Weather Service has done for us is, on the bottom of there you can see, they've developed a forecast specifically for the upper watershed area. So the numbers that you see in the top are, what they do is they've developed a 7-day outlook for the upper watershed, and that summarizes the total precipitation every 6 hours and then daily. So, and this updates twice a day. So this has been pretty spot on for us since they developed this a few months ago to really help us anticipate what the upper watershed's going to get, and then can help us inform what we think the lake levels are going to do. And we're working on doing a similar thing for the lower watershed district, for the Minnehaha Creek. We kind of wanted to get down the upper watershed stuff first before we transition into the lower watershed. So that's the second tool. So the last thing that kind of goes into consideration for dam operations is the capacity of Minnehaha Creek. This is very similar to what we have on Lake Minnetonka. This is one tool that has been in place for many years. As I stated, it is one of the most visited sites for the USGS, and it's very helpful to see what's happening on Minnehaha Creek. And this is updated every hour. And there's also, you can also on this website see how precipitation and the creek height. There's 2 different graphs. You can see as soon as it rains, the creek jumps, and you can see that correlation with that. So we take those 3 pieces, what the lake's doing, what the predicted forecast is, and what the creek capacity is, and the National Weather Service has then taken things a step forward in developing this Lake Minnetonka simulation. So what they've done is taken the district's XP swim model, which is the hydrologic model for the watershed district, and have been able to input it into their own system and input their forecasts. So this is a busy graph, but this is what their tables look like. So they take the district's XP swim model, input the forecast. So this image, I know it's a bunch of lines, but what it's essentially showing is the total inflow for all the upper watershed creeks and all of the water that falls on the lake itself and what that total is. So you can see that top blue line would then be the total inflow that's coming into the lake. And then on the very top line, what they do is they're showing what the dam discharge is. So everything left of that solid red line that's coming down the middle is actual measured flow. So our water quality folks are helping get the information as soon as they can about what's going on in the upper watershed. And then the National Weather Service inputs their forecast, and to the right is what they predict will be happening for inflow with the forecast. And then you can see how the dam discharge at the top kind of compares to what's coming in and out. So from here, knowing what that total Lake Minnetonka inflow is, they take that information and they're able to predict what the Lake Minnetonka water elevation will be. So on this graph, what they're doing is they're running a simulation, and then they're also showing what the actual measured is. And there is a big gap between these. They're still working on the kink for that, but what's promising to see is that the simulate, like they're having the same ups and downs. It's just figuring out why there's that consistent kind of 0.3-inch gap between them. But knowing what that gap is, you're just able to subtract that and figure out what the elevations will be. So to the left of the red line is again what was measured. To the right of the red line is what's predicted to be in the next days or weeks to come. So this has been very helpful recently, now that they've kind of calibrated a little bit, to have them run scenarios for us. We've done that recently, saying, let's say we With the forecast that's coming, if we keep the lake at 250 CFS discharge, what will the elevation be in X amount of days, or a different discharge, and able to really be pretty accurate for what we've been seeing the numbers come back to be.
Yeah, I have a place that I watch on the creek. It's on 44th Street at the bridge, and it's against a little wall they got there. And it seems to be your flow, your control of the dam seems to be in such a way that it maintains a level rather than going up and down. Normally after a rain, it goes up into the yards, but recently I've been watching it, and it stays pretty level no matter what the rain level is. Are you actually? Is it just my perception, or are you actually that much able to control it?
Manager Miller, managers, we're trying to get better at that. We're trying to not, stick within the dam operating zones, so we're not pushing the creek beyond its banks. So yeah, I think using this information and knowing what the precipitation is going to be, and knowing what that impact would be on the rise of the creek, we're able to lower the discharge to try to keep the creek within its banks. So it's trying to be intentional in doing that.
Well, it appears that it's working.
Thank you. Manager Shackelford and then Mr. Whisker.
I was gonna ask a question about, based on the level of the lake, are you able to predict what the discharge of the dam is? And one slide back, I thought there's a dam discharge and then lake inflow. And the dam discharge is linked to a rectilinear curve as opposed to
Yeah, so the dam discharge is, they're basing it off of our operating plan zones. So once you reach certain elevations, then things change. So that's what it's more of that straight edge.
But does this provide a tool to begin to predict
That's
based on
what-
our operating manual?
Yeah, and that's what I'm gonna end with, what we're trying to get to.
Mr. Whisker?
I
No?
lost it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mr. Mann?
Manager Whitehead, so I should compliment, she did a really nice job this week in grabbing 50 CFS, she pulled that out the hydrograph. So Dick, to your point, that's pulling it down, being able to predict what you got, and that's a compliment to Tiffany's work that she's done, so.
That was the comment that we did receive from the Nevada Public Works Director, is
Yep.
there's a noticeable cushion that they're
Yeah.
seeing for the homeowners that are seemingly routinely affected by high water, where it does come out of the banks, just because of dialing in the flashiness of water in the lower watershed coming in the pipe system, dialing back the dam discharge a little bit. Just those little fine-tuned tweaks, I think, make a difference down for people that are in the floodplain in the Diamond Cypress Park.
Thank you. Back to Ms. Schroffel.
All right. So that's been a big tool that we've developing and are using a lot of this year to just help calibrate and really refine. And then what the National Weather Service would like to do is then move down the Minnehaha Creek, so we have a full kind of spectrum picture of what's going on, and then eventually they'd like to be able to have kind of a river forecast warning point along Minnehaha Creek, since it does get so flashy. So the last piece or tool that we've added is the weather stations. So earlier this year, the board approved granting Hennepin County Emergency Management 2 easements on district properties to install weather stations. So this is what, if you go to their website, and I provided a link, I think, in my email last week to this, you can see all the different things that's tracking. And these weather stations are tracking things minute by minute. So we have 2 stations. One is in Minnetrista along Painter Creek, and one is near St. Bonnie along 6 Mile. So this has been very helpful to be able to anticipate what's going to come into the lake. So we can actually see, because we can download, so here's an example of, you can download the data and you can see what's happened that day accumulated to help inform what we are anticipating coming into the lake. So then this helps the National Weather Service know also what's coming in. So what this is going to do is help us really calibrate what's falling on the landscape and what's happening to the creek immediately downstream, because just downstream of both of these sites we have a continuous stream monitoring site, so we can know instantaneously how our model's doing and able to calibrate it. So that's why there's that feedback loop back down. So that's been very helpful. They were able to get these in, the Minnetrista one, and right before that big 3.5-inch rain event. So it was neat to track that minute by minute to see what was happening. So using all these tools, what we're trying to do is develop a communication piece. So we're trying to get better about being transparent and help people anticipate what we might be doing with the dam discharge. So I sent out a graph similar to this earlier this week. So what the black line is showing is actual measured Lake Minnetonka levels, and then the red line is showing what we're predicting the levels to be and what the dam discharge might be, just to help people. We found this useful in 2014 for people to understand that the discharge might be high for some time just because you can only release so much water at a time from the lake. So what we want to do is take this kind of graphic and figure out a way where we can do something similar to this. So the National Weather Service, this is a current forecast for the South Fork Crow River. So what they do is they're able to, left of that blue dotted line down the middle, show what the actual current stage rate of the river is, and then to the right forecast what it will be what it might be with the forecast that they're anticipating. So what I'd like to do is figure out a way where we can have something similar to this, where we're able to show what's been happening, what the lake flow has been, and then have them input the forecast so people can see where that falls within our management zones. So they can have an idea of what the discharge zones can be expected. So it's not, if they don't think it's us just going out there and picking a random number, they can see, oh, we're in zone 3, so I can expect 150 CFS to maximum creek capacity. And anticipate that hopefully maybe like a week out or something, just so people can be aware of it and informed on what to expect. So that's all I had for tonight. But yeah, just thought it'd be useful to give you an update on current water levels. We're sitting, a bit higher than we'd like to, about 6 inches higher than we'd like to, but it is looking dry, and hopefully by the end of the month we can kind of get back to where we'd like to be for the year, and then continue to work with the National Weather Service to develop that communication piece that I think will really help alleviate a lot of the questions and calls we get, and people be able to anticipate for themselves what we might be doing with the dam.
Thank you very much. Manager Olson?
2 questions. Can you go back to the weather station readout? Thank you. To the right of that red circle, you've got pressure. That's not barometric pressure. What kind of pressure is that? 98.94. Barometric is like 29, 31 to 29 inches.
I'll have to get back to you, Manager Olson. I'm not quite exactly sure. Oh, and one thing I forgot to add on this piece was, so they're able to measure soil water content here, and that was a big thing that Hennepin County this last weekend then sent out potential warnings on landslides, because that was a thing that we had happen around the lake in 2014. Okay. So they were able to utilize information at both of our sites to help inform if they were anticipating any landslides on the lakes. That was a new thing for them that they were glad to be able to utilize.
And my second question is to our engineer. With this volume of water, 311 cubic feet per second thundering over the falls and going through the Glen, how is our Glen project holding up day after day after day? This is the time of year you can drive down the middle of the creek on some summers.
I haven't personally been down there lately, and I haven't heard from Tiffany. My guess is that it's not any worse off than after the 2013 floods, which really did something. Because that had the big floods and then had big rains on top of it. So I had personally received any calls, and I don't know if Ms. Shopper's received any.
I went down there last weekend, and it actually looks spectacular. There was a section where I thought, oh my God, I'm in the Boundary Waters. Like, it reminded me of a stream that I was in up there. I thought the AIS management was, or not the AIS, but the vegetative management could be a lot better. We once were trying to build a path up above the part where it hit stop. It was covered with people. Like, they were scrambling up top, and, but in terms of anything moving, the walls look solid.
Staying put.
They're all, I mean, like, you couldn't see, you know how the ugly footings came
Yep,
out?
yep.
You couldn't see the footings. There were a couple standing waves where they were put in. There are a bunch of trees that last winter fell across the creek that are still there, so it's kind of the visibility of the creek in that first section between the first two walking bridges was diminished. But even downstream, at the historic dam that's broken through, you couldn't see much by way of damage. The path that goes around, that we built on the river right side.
The dock.
Yeah, the dock. There was one big panel that I guess I didn't reach out, that was off. Like, I actually moved it back so it was on the path, so it kind of reconnected it. It was like the second to last panel. But there were big stepping stones that were placed in the earth. A couple of, like, there's a section that's right next to the creek. The water was partially covering them, but they were stable. They would not move.
Good.
Like, it looked beautiful down there. When I was first on the board, we put in a big curve and put in VRSS stakes. It looked naturalized. There was no undermining of the wall. It was really just kind of impressive.
There's a report. Manager Miller.
In your communication effort, you know which houses are subject to, or have flooded, or, so have you got any kind of, their emails or something to send them notice or something?
Manager Miller, that is something we've been trying to figure out a way, because usually they call me, it's just kind of daily communication.
There's only like 50 people that you'd have to
Yeah.
notify and say, we'd like to set up the system, send us your email so we can put you on the notification or something.
Yeah, that is something I'd like to figure out a tool, or like an email alert or a text alert for those folks, rather than trying to rely on the city. But that is on my kind of to-do list of figuring out for those folks.
Great.
I had been wondering about whether this high water would impact the repair work on the dam, but it sounds like you expect the water to come down to a fairly predictable level.
Yeah, Manager White, managers, hopefully we can get it down to a manageable level, but into talking with the contractor, it was an issue for them if we have to push to next year. So we figured the dam is operated for almost 40 plus years in the way it is, so hopefully one more season.
Yes, the knock on Formica rule, I heard that. Any other questions from Ms. Schauffer, Manager Miller?
I just got a related comment I want to make. I'm going to call in the staff and have them look at the sub-watershed district that I'm in, because the water it's all local water. It's not from the creek, because the creek is not backing up, but it's higher than it's ever been under normal conditions in the wetland that I'm connected to, and it's not doing a great deal of damage to my yard, but it's flooding my yard. So I just want to have them look and see if there's any. So I'm going to be calling the staff and want to make sure that I'm not accused of taking advantage of my position as a board member to ask for special services. So I don't know what kind of further notice that is required, but I don't want to.
You've aired it.
Okay.
Yeah, that sounds good. Manager Becker.
Ms. Schauffer, the simulation model, do you anticipate it to work as well in the springtime when there's the effect of snowpack?
Manager Becker, yeah, that isn't something we didn't do it this year, but that is something that the National Weather Service is pretty good at, figuring out what the snowpack is across an area. So that's something we'll certainly test out this upcoming spring. But we did find, in 2011, we had WINC do a similar exercise, and that was pretty accurate using our XKSWIM model and what the water content of the soil pack, soil, the snowpack was across the watershed. So I anticipate with this being their kind of niche, that they'll be able to do that just as accurately.
Thank you, Mr.
Factory
Neal.
managers, they are building a temperature component into the model. They're testing it right now. They're testing it on the evapotranspiration off the lake. They do look to take into account the snowpack and the water equivalencies. So that'll be another tweak they'll look to do.
Okay, and one other question, and you may not be able to answer this. What's the maximum discharge rate we can achieve through the dam?
300.
So Becker managers, in 2014, we completely lifted the gates out of the water, because at that point everything was submerged, and the operating plan at that point calls for unrestricted discharge, so we unrestricted it. And we weren't able to measure it specifically at the dam, so we measured it at the McGinty Road culverts. And I believe the higher end we measured there was above 500 CFS.
So that's also flowing over.
It's flying over the
That
weir
was,
too.
yeah, flowing over
flowing
the
over the
emergency
hole.
weir,
Yeah.
flowing
Yeah.
over the dam.
So that wasn't all coming through the
Lake
dam.
Minnetonka extended itself all the way to
To
494.
Yeah.
Right.
But if the dam was,
The only hole in the.
at like at the cut point before it overtopped, is that kind of what your question is?
No, I was just curious as to what the maximum discharge rate was. I realize that it depends on what's anticipated to be in the creek
Mhm.
operationally, downstream from the dam.
Yeah, because, we can, as soon as that headwaters wetland area starts to, as soon as we increase, that gets a jump, and then you're just losing your head difference between what the lake level and that level is. So at a certain point, those, like we found in 2014, they just equalize, and you're not really able to push more than what can go through those culverts at McGinty Road.
Okay.
It was amazing.
The number that jumped out at me in your email was 331 Waka, or CFS, I think was the
Yeah, it was,
number. So it was actually flowing faster there than upstream because of the stormwater pipes in Minneapolis.
exactly. Yep, so we were, I think around Minneapolis, what we've kind of gauged is the maximum creek capacity ranges, and it depends on where you're on the creek, but between 250 and 300 CFS. So that's why we're trying to provide that cushion for Edina. But yeah, around, especially in Minneapolis, you have so much stormwater runoff coming in that you really see a jump in that discharge. And that's what our water quality folks notice that as well when they go out and monitor every week, that once you get to a certain point, the discharge that they're measuring is increased significantly in Minneapolis.
Thank you for the great information.
Yeah.
Do you have anything else?
That's all I have.
The meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.